The shadows outside my office window grew longer as I traced my fingertip along the rim of my coffee mug, now cold to the touch. The city skyline looked like a jagged mountain range against the dusky horizon, reminding me how far I'd climbed to reach this view, this corner office on the 37th floor of Ellison Tower. My name is Corinne Blaylock, and 3 years ago, I was nobody, or so my ex-husband delighted in reminding me. Just look at yourself, Wesley had sneered during our final argument, the night before I filed for divorce. You're barely a shadow of Vivian. No wonder I chose her instead. Vivian Lancaster Harlow. Even her name sounded like it belonged on a marquee. Tall, blonde, poised, everything I supposedly wasn't. My computer pinged with a new email notification, jolting me from my bitter reminiscence. The subject line sent a jolt of adrenaline through my system. Acquisition finalized, meet your new team. I clicked it open, scanning the contents with growing disbelief. As per today's board meeting, Ellison Media has successfully completed its acquisition of Harlow Creative Solutions. Integration meetings will begin tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp. Department heads will meet their new team members. My pulse quickened as I scrolled through the attached organizational chart. There, 3 levels below my position as Executive Creative Director, was a name I knew all too well. Vivian Lancaster Harlow. Senior Content Strategist. I leaned back in my chair, a strange laugh bubbling up from somewhere deep inside me. After 3 years of carefully rebuilding my life, piece by painful piece, the universe had just handed me the most delicious twist of fate imaginable. Tomorrow morning, I would become Vivian's boss. Wesley's words echoed in my mind, you're barely a shadow of Vivian. Well, shadows sometimes grew longer than the objects that cast them, didn't they? I gathered my things, a renewed energy coursing through my veins. Tomorrow promised to be very interesting indeed. The next morning, I arrived at the office an hour early, selecting my outfit with surgical precision, a tailored charcoal suit that accentuated my frame, paired with the blood-red stilettos that had cost me half a month's rent when I'd first started rebuilding my life post-divorce. My armor, as I called it. The conference room slowly filled with faces, some familiar, some not. I maintained an expression of poised neutrality as I reviewed my notes, occasionally glancing up to make brief eye contact with newcomers, offering the barest professional smile. Then she walked in. Vivian Lancaster Harlow looked exactly as I remembered her, effortlessly elegant in a cream silk blouse and navy pencil skirt, her blonde hair swept into a flawless updo. She was laughing at something a colleague had said, her hand lightly touching his arm in that practiced way of hers. Our eyes met across the room. The laugh died in her throat. Recognition flickered across her face, confusion, disbelief, and finally, the smallest hint of fear. Good. She remembered me. Shall we begin? I stood, commanding the room's attention with practiced ease. For those just joining us from Harlow Creative, welcome to Ellison Media. I'm Corinne Blaylock, Executive Creative Director. I'll be overseeing the integration of our creative teams. Vivian's face had gone pale, her perfect composure cracking just enough for me to notice. She took a seat furthest from me, her movements stiff. Throughout the meeting, I maintained rigid professionalism, addressing each department representative with equal attention. When it came time for Vivian to present her team's current projects, she faltered slightly. Vivian Lancaster Harlow, she introduced herself, her voice catching momentarily. Senior Content Strategist formerly at Harlow Creative. Yes, we're familiar with your work, Ms. Lancaster Harlow, I replied coolly. Please continue. Her presentation was flawless, of course. Despite her initial nervousness, Vivian was nothing if not competent. I watched her regain her confidence as she outlined her team's achievements, her voice growing stronger with each slide. When she finished, I nodded. Impressive results. Though I notice your ROI metrics don't align with our standard benchmarks here at Ellison. We'll need to recalibrate your approach to meet our expectations. The slightest flush colored her cheeks. Of course. I'm sure we can adjust. I'm sure you can. I smiled, professionally, distantly. We'll schedule a one-on-one to discuss specifics. My assistant will be in touch. As the meeting concluded and people filed out, Vivian lingered, clearly wanting to speak privately. I pretended not to notice, gathering my papers with deliberate slowness. When we were finally alone, she approached my end of the conference table. Corinne, she began, her voice carefully modulated. I had no idea you worked here. Evidently. I didn't look up from my papers. This is quite a coincidence. At this, I raised my gaze to meet hers. Is it? I've been executive creative director at Ellison for over a year. Our acquisition of Harlow was hardly a secret in the industry. She shifted her weight, uncomfortable. Wesley never mentioned. I wouldn't know what Wesley does or doesn't mention these days. I cut her off smoothly. We don't exactly exchange Christmas cards. Vivian drew a deep breath. Look, I know this is awkward, but I'd like us to be able to work together professionally. What happened was unfortunate. Unfortunate. The word hung between us, absurdly inadequate. Is that what you call it when you sleep with another woman's husband? Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows drew together. That's not entirely fair, Corinne. The marriage was already. Let's not do this, I interrupted, my voice tight. Not here, not now. I'm your superior, Ms. Lancaster Harlow. That's the only relationship we need to navigate. The formal use of her name wasn't lost on her. She straightened, nodding once. Of course. I apologize for the unprofessionalism. Your one-on-one is scheduled for tomorrow, 2 p.m. We'll discuss the recalibration of your team's metrics then. I'll be there, she replied, her professional mask sliding back into place. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, Corinne. I am sorry. After she left, I remained seated, staring out at the city skyline through the conference room's glass walls. The satisfaction I'd anticipated feeling had materialized, yes, but alongside it was something unexpected, a hollow ache in my chest. 3 years ago, Wesley's betrayal had shattered me. I'd thrown myself into my work, climbing the corporate ladder with single-minded determination, fueled partly by talent but mostly by a desperate need to prove him wrong. I'd succeeded beyond my wildest expectations. So why did victory taste so ashen? My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. We need to talk. It's about Vivian. Wesley. I stared at the screen, my heart performing an unwelcome somersault. 3 years of silence, and now this? I deleted the message without responding and slipped my phone back into my pocket. Whatever game Wesley was playing, I had no interest in being his pawn. Not again. I had worked too hard to rewrite my story. I wasn't about to let them drag me back into a narrative where I was just an afterthought, a shadow. At precisely 2 p.m. the following day, Vivian knocked on my office door. I'd deliberately scheduled meetings throughout the morning, ensuring I wouldn't have time to overthink our upcoming conversation. Come in, I called, not looking up from my computer screen. Vivian entered, elegant as ever in a forest green dress that complemented her complexion perfectly. She set a folder on my desk. I've prepared some thoughts on recalibrating our metrics to align with Ellison's standards, she said, her voice professionally neutral. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Let's see what you've come up with. For the next 45 minutes, we discussed strategies and benchmarks, both of us adhering to a rigidly professional script. If not for the occasional flicker of discomfort in her eyes when our gazes met, one would never guess at the complicated history between us. Your proposal is solid, I admitted as we concluded. Implement these changes and schedule a follow-up in 2 weeks to assess progress. Thank you. She hesitated, then added, I'd like to say that I really do admire what you've accomplished here, Corinne. Your reputation in the industry is impressive. The compliment felt like a peace offering. I wasn't ready to accept it. I work hard, I replied simply. Results speak for themselves. Vivian nodded, gathering her notes. She appeared ready to leave, then seemed to reconsider. Wesley contacted me last night. He said he texted you. My expression remained carefully neutral. Did he? He's concerned about our working relationship. Our working relationship is precisely that, professional and work-related. Wesley's concerns are irrelevant. Vivian looked down at her perfectly manicured hands. He thinks you might use your position to. To what? I interrupted, my voice sharp. Seek revenge? Sabotage your career? Is that the kind of person you think I am, Vivian? She met my gaze. I don't know what kind of person you are anymore, Corinne. It's been 3 years. 3 years, I echoed. And in that time, I've become executive creative director at one of the top media companies in the country. I didn't get here by being petty or vindictive. I know. She sighed. Which is why I told Wesley he was being ridiculous. This surprised me. You did? Vivian nodded. Whatever history we have, I respect you professionally. I've followed your career, actually. The Westland campaign was brilliant. The Westland campaign, my first major success after the divorce. The irony wasn't lost on me. Thank you, I said, the words feeling strange on my tongue. An awkward silence settled between us, filled with unspoken words and tangled emotions. Wesley and I, she began. This meeting is over, I cut her off, not ready to hear whatever she was about to share about their life together. Email me your implementation timeline by end of day. She looked as if she wanted to say more, but thought better of it. Of course. Thank you for your time. After she left, I found myself staring at the door, a mixture of emotions swirling inside me. The professional part of me acknowledged that Vivian was talented and competent, an asset to the company. The wounded part of me wanted to see her fail, to prove that Wesley had made a mistake. But which part was stronger? And which was I willing to let define me? My phone buzzed again. Wesley, calling this time. I watched his name flash on the screen until the call went to voicemail. Whatever he had to say, I didn't want to hear it, not yet. I had made my choice 3 years ago when I walked away from a marriage that made me feel invisible. I wouldn't go back to being that person, not for anyone. The next few weeks fell into an uncomfortable rhythm. Vivian proved herself to be exceptionally capable, adapting her team's approach to meet Ellison's standards with minimal friction. In our weekly check-ins, we maintained strict professionalism, neither of us willing to breach the wall we'd constructed between our present and our past. Wesley continued his attempts to contact me, texts, calls, even emails to my work address. I deleted them all without reading, determined to maintain the boundaries I'd worked so hard to establish. Then came the Henderson pitch. Henderson Global was the kind of client that could transform a company's portfolio overnight. Their marketing budget was legendary, their standards impossibly high. Securing their business would be a career-defining achievement. "We need our best people on this," Marcus Ellison, our CEO, announced during the executive briefing. "Corinne, I want you leading the creative team. And bring in that new woman from Harlow, Lancaster Harlow. Her work on the Apex campaign was exactly the kind of innovative thinking Henderson appreciates." My stomach tightened. "Sir, there are other talented strategists we could consider." Marcus insisted, his tone brooking no argument. "I've reviewed her portfolio. She's perfect for this." And so it was decided. Vivian and I would work closely together on the most important pitch of the year. The universe, it seemed, had a particularly twisted sense of humor. I called Vivian to my office after the meeting, explaining the situation with as much professional detachment as I could muster. "The Henderson pitch?" Her eyes widened. "That's huge." "Yes," I agreed. "Which is why personal feelings have no place in this process. Can you handle that?" Her expression hardened slightly. "I've been handling it for weeks, Corinne. The question is, can you?" The challenge in her voice sparked an old flame of competition inside me. "I've been handling much worse for 3 years. This will be no different." "Fine." She straightened. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow. 8 a.m. We have 4 weeks to develop a pitch that will blow Henderson away." After she left, I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. 4 weeks of close collaboration with Vivian. 4 weeks of navigating the minefield of our shared history while creating something exceptional enough to win over Henderson Global. My phone buzzed yet again with Wesley's name. This time, against my better judgment, I answered. "What?" I demanded, my patience exhausted. "Corinne, finally." His voice sounded exactly as I remembered it, smooth, confident, with that undercurrent of urgency that had once made me feel so needed. "We need to talk about Vivian." "No, we don't," I replied coldly. "Your wife's employment is between her and Ellison Media. It has nothing to do with you. You're her boss, Corinne. Don't pretend this isn't some kind of twisted revenge plot." I laughed, the sound bitter even to my own ears. "Your ego is truly remarkable, Wesley. Not everything is about you. Isn't it?" His voice lowered. "You've spent 3 years trying to prove me wrong, climbing the corporate ladder, reinventing yourself. If that's not about me, what is it about?" His words hit closer to home than I wanted to admit. Had I been using my career as a form of revenge? The thought was unsettling. "I built my career for me, not to spite you," I said, injecting my voice with a conviction I didn't entirely feel. "Now, unless you have something relevant to discuss, this conversation is over." "She's pregnant, Corinne." The words landed like a physical blow. "She's pregnant, and the stress of this situation isn't good for her or the baby. Whatever game you're playing." I hung up, my hand shaking. Pregnant. Vivian was pregnant with Wesley's child. The family they would have, the life I'd once imagined for myself, it was all happening for them while I sat alone in my corner office, surrounded by awards that suddenly seemed meaningless. I stared out at the city skyline, the lights blurring through unexpected tears. I'd thought I was past this, thought I'd moved on. But Wesley's revelation had ripped open wounds I'd believed were healed, revealing the raw pain beneath. Tomorrow, I would face Vivian across a conference table and pretend I didn't know she was carrying the child of the man who had once been my world. I would be professional. I would be focused. I would be the executive creative director of Ellison Media. But tonight, just for tonight, I would allow myself to be Corinne, the woman who had lost more than just a husband in the wreckage of her marriage. The woman who, despite her success, still sometimes felt like nothing more than a shadow. The Henderson pitch team assembled in the main conference room the next morning, the air charged with anticipation and caffeine. I arrived purposefully late, making a statement with my entrance, sleek black blazer, designer portfolio, expression that said I owned not just the room but the entire building. Vivian was already there, her blonde hair pulled back in a sophisticated chignon, engaged in animated conversation with the digital marketing lead. She looked up as I entered, her smile faltering just slightly. I scanned her figure automatically, looking for signs of her pregnancy. Was that a slight roundness to her normally flat stomach, or just the cut of her blouse? I forced my gaze away, disgusted with myself. "Good morning, everyone," I said, taking my position at the head of the table. "Today we begin the most important pitch of the year. Henderson Global doesn't just represent revenue, they represent our chance to redefine Ellison Media's position in the market." I outlined the approach, assigned responsibilities, and established deadlines with military precision. Throughout my presentation, I was acutely aware of Vivian watching me, her expression unreadable. "Questions?" I asked finally. Vivian raised her hand. "I'd like to propose a different angle for the content strategy. Based on my research of Henderson's recent initiatives." "Submit your proposal in writing," I interrupted, more sharply than intended. "All alternative approaches need proper vetting." A flicker of surprise crossed her face at my tone. "Of course. I'll have it on your desk by the end of day." The meeting proceeded, but the dynamic had shifted. The team sensed the tension between us, exchanging curious glances when they thought I wasn't looking. As the group dispersed, Vivian approached my chair. "Can we talk? Privately?" I nodded curtly, gathering my materials. "My office. 5 minutes." Once there, I positioned myself behind my desk, creating a physical barrier between us. Vivian closed the door and turned to face me. "Wesley told you," she said simply. I kept my expression neutral. "Told me what?" "Don't play games, Corinne." "He told me he called you last night." I exhaled slowly. "Your pregnancy is your personal business. It has no bearing on our professional relationship." She studied me for a moment, then sank into the chair opposite my desk. "You're angry." "I'm not anything," I replied coolly. "Except busy." "Was there something work-related you needed to discuss?" "You think I'm living your life," she said, ignoring my attempt to redirect the conversation. "The life you were supposed to have with Wesley." The accuracy of her assessment stung. "What I think is irrelevant. What matters is delivering an exceptional pitch to Henderson Global." "It's not how you think it is," she continued, her voice soft. "Wesley and it's not perfect. It's not even good most of the time." I didn't want to hear this. Didn't want to know that the relationship that had destroyed my marriage was anything less than a fairy tale. It made the sacrifice seem pointless. "This isn't appropriate workplace conversation," I said firmly. "Then let's have it outside the workplace," she countered. "Dinner. Tonight. Just hear me out, and then I promise I'll never broach the subject again." "Why?" I demanded. "Why now, after 3 years? What could you possibly have to say that would make any difference?" Vivian's hand moved unconsciously to her stomach, a gesture so maternal it made my chest ache with an emotion I refused to name. Because I'm tired of living with ghosts, Corinne. Yours. Mine. The ones we've created together. The sincerity in her voice gave me pause. What ghosts was she living with? The perfect Vivian who had everything I'd ever wanted. What regrets could she possibly have? Curiosity won out over caution. Fine. Dinner. But not tonight, I have plans. A lie, but I needed time to prepare myself. Tomorrow. Le Blanc. 8 o'clock. Relief washed over her face. Thank you. I'll be there. After she left, I sat motionless in my chair, questioning my decision. Dinner with Vivian meant reopening wounds that had taken years to heal. It meant confronting the reality of her life with Wesley rather than the vengeful fantasy I'd constructed. Was I ready for that? And more importantly, what would I do with the truth once I had it? Le Blanc was deliberately chosen, the kind of upscale restaurant where privacy came with the exorbitant price tag. I arrived early, selecting a corner table that offered a view of the entrance. I wanted to see Vivian before she saw me. She arrived precisely on time, scanning the room until her gaze found mine. Even from a distance, I could see the nervous energy in her movements as she made her way to the table. Thank you for coming, she said, settling into her chair. I nodded, taking a sip of water. Let's not waste time with pleasantries, Vivian. You wanted to talk, so talk. She drew a deep breath, seeming to gather her thoughts. I owe you an apology. A real one, not the rushed version I gave in your office. For sleeping with my husband? I asked bluntly. For that. For not being honest with you when it started. For letting you believe your marriage was something it wasn't. I frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Vivian looked down at her hands. Wesley wasn't happy long before I came into the picture, Corinne. He was seeing other women, I wasn't the first. The revelation shouldn't have surprised me, yet somehow it did. How do you know that? Because he's done the same to me. The admission hung between us, stark and unexpected. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception, but found only resignation. The great love story isn't so great after all? I couldn't keep the bitter edge from my voice. It was never a great love story, she replied quietly. It was two damaged people making each other more damaged. Still is. Then why stay? Why have a child with him? The questions escaped before I could stop them. Vivian's hand moved to her stomach, that protective gesture that made something twist inside me. The pregnancy wasn't planned. I was actually preparing to leave him when I found out. The waiter approached for our order, providing a momentary reprieve from the intensity of our conversation. After he left, I found myself leaning forward, drawn in despite my reservations. If you were planning to leave, what changed? She sighed. Everything and nothing. The baby complicated things, obviously. But also, there's a part of me that still believes people can change. That Wesley can change. He won't, I said flatly. I spent 7 years waiting for Wesley to become the man I thought I married. It never happened. I know that now. She met my gaze directly. Which is why I've accepted the London position. This was news to me. What London position? Ellison is expanding the European division. They're looking for experienced content strategists. I interviewed last week. Marcus didn't mention this to me. I asked him not to, she admitted. I wanted to tell you myself. I'm leaving after the Henderson pitch, regardless of the outcome. I sat back, processing this information. Does Wesley know? Not yet. Vulnerability flickered across her face. He won't take it well. No, I agreed, remembering how controlling Wesley could be. He won't. Our meals arrived, and we ate in contemplative silence for a few minutes. The revelation of Vivian's plans had shifted something between us, not quite erasing our complicated history, but altering its shape. I never hated you, you know, Vivian said suddenly. I envied you. I nearly choked on my wine. You envied me? That's absurd. Is it? You had the courage to walk away. To build something entirely your own. She gestured around us. Look at you now, successful, respected, independent. Meanwhile, I've been living in a gilded cage of my own making. The irony was almost too much to bear. All this time, I'd been envying her, the woman who supposedly had everything I'd lost, while she'd been envying me. Wesley used to compare us, I said, the words emerging unbidden. He'd mention how effortlessly elegant you were, how naturally you fit into his world. After a while, I started to feel like a shadow, she finished softly. He told me what he said to you that night. It was cruel. It was effective, I admitted. It haunted me for years. Vivian's expression darkened. That's what he does, finds your insecurities and exploits them. Makes you doubt yourself until you're dependent on his validation. The accuracy of her assessment was unsettling. When did you realize this about him? Too late. She smiled ruefully. About a year into our marriage. By then, I'd already given up my company to join his firm, isolated myself from friends who didn't understand our relationship, changed my appearance to match his preferences. I recognized the pattern all too well. Wesley has a talent for remaking people in his image. Not you, she pointed out. You remade yourself instead. The observation caught me off guard. Had I really remade myself, or had I simply been reacting to Wesley's rejection all this time? Building a career, an identity, to prove him wrong rather than to fulfill myself? The waiter cleared our plates, offering dessert menus that we both declined. Why are you telling me all this, Vivian? What do you want from me? She looked me directly in the eyes. Absolution, maybe. Understanding. Or just the chance to finally tell the truth. And what is the truth? That I'm sorry for the pain I caused you. That Wesley isn't the prize either of us thought he was. That I admire the woman you've become in spite of everything. Her sincerity was disarming. For 3 years, I'd cast Vivian as the villain in my story, the beautiful usurper who had stolen my life. Seeing her as a real person, with struggles and regrets of her own, required a fundamental reshaping of my narrative. What will you do in London? I asked, deliberately shifting the conversation to safer ground. Start over, she replied. Create a life based on my terms, not someone else's expectations. And the baby? Her hand moved instinctively to her stomach again. We'll have at least one parent who refuses to perpetuate toxic patterns. As we finished our wine, an unexpected feeling of kinship settled between us. Not friendship, exactly, but a mutual recognition, 2 women who had survived the same storm, albeit on different vessels. The Henderson pitch, I said as we prepared to leave. Your idea. Tell me about it. Surprise flickered across her face. Now? Consider it a professional courtesy. Colleague to colleague. She smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her features. It's about authenticity in the age of artificial connection. Using nostalgia not as a regressive force but as an anchor for meaningful engagement in a digital world. Interesting. And it was. Send me the full concept tomorrow. We'll review it with the team. Thank you, Corinne. She hesitated, then added, for everything. As we parted outside the restaurant, I watched her walk away, this woman who had been both my nemesis and my mirror for so long. The anger I'd carried for 3 years hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into something more complex, more nuanced. My phone buzzed. Wesley again. This time, I answered. What did she tell you? He demanded without preamble. Hello to you too, Wesley, I replied, my voice steady. It's been a while. Cut the crap, Corinne. I know you had dinner with Vivian. What did she say about me? The old Corinne might have tried to placate him, to smooth his ruffled ego. But I wasn't that person anymore. She told me the truth, I said simply. Something you never had the courage to do. She's emotional, he dismissed. Hormonal. Pregnancy has her making mountains out of molehills. Interesting. That's exactly what you used to say about me when I called you out on your lies. Turns out, the problem was never our emotions, it was your integrity. His voice hardened. You've turned her against me, haven't you? This whole boss thing is just your twisted revenge plot. I laughed, genuinely amused by his narcissism. Oh, Wesley. Not everything is about you. Sometimes it's simply about women recognizing their worth. She's my wife, he growled. And she's carrying my child. Yes, she is, I agreed. And that's between you and her. But professionally, she's a talented strategist with a promising future. Don't make the mistake of underestimating her, like you did with me. I hung up, feeling lighter than I had in years. The confrontation I'd avoided for so long had finally happened, and I'd emerged stronger for it. As I hailed a taxi, I realized something profound. I was no longer defining myself in relation to Wesley or Vivian or the life I'd lost. For the first time since the divorce, I was simply Corinne Blaylock, executive creative director, mentor, woman in progress. Not a shadow, but a force of my own making. The Henderson pitch came together over the next 2 weeks, with Vivian's concept forming the emotional core of our presentation. We worked long hours, our previous tension transformed into a productive professional dynamic. The team noticed the change, though no one dared comment directly. Office gossip speculated about our secret friendship, but both Vivian and I maintained a careful professional distance, sharing knowing smiles when particularly absurd rumors reached our ears. Wesley continued his attempts to contact both of us, increasingly desperate as he realized his control was slipping. Vivian finally told him about London 3 days before the Henderson pitch, resulting in a spectacular shouting match that security had to break up when he stormed the Ellison lobby. Are you okay? I asked her afterward, finding her in the break room, hands shaking as she attempted to make tea. No, she admitted. But I will be. I took the kettle from her trembling fingers. He'll calm down eventually. Will he? She looked doubtful. This is different from his usual tantrums. He feels cornered. Which makes him dangerous, I acknowledged, having seen this side of Wesley myself. I've documented everything, she said quietly. The threats, the controlling behavior, the infidelities. My lawyer has it all. I nodded, understanding the precaution all too well. Good. Don't hesitate to get a restraining order if necessary. I never thought it would come to this, she said, accepting the tea I handed her. When we started, it all seemed so passionate? Intense? Like you were the center of his universe? She smiled ruefully. Exactly like that. That's his specialty, I replied. Making you feel like the most important person in the world, until you're not. We shared a moment of silent understanding, two women who had traveled the same treacherous road. The pitch is tomorrow, I reminded her, steering us back to safer territory. Get some rest tonight. I need you sharp. Yes, boss, she replied, a hint of humor in her voice. As she left, I found myself reflecting on the strange turn our relationship had taken. Not quite friendship, but something approaching mutual respect, a connection forged through shared experience rather than shared affection. The Henderson pitch was scheduled for 10 a.m. the following day. I arrived at the office at 6, making last-minute adjustments to the presentation, reviewing our talking points, ensuring every detail was perfect. Vivian arrived at 7, looking remarkably composed given the drama of the previous day. I've been thinking about the transition between the market analysis and the creative concept, she said, not bothering with pleasantries. It feels abrupt. We need a stronger narrative bridge. I nodded, appreciating her focus. I was thinking the same thing. What if we use the consumer journey as the connecting thread? We worked seamlessly together, refining and strengthening the presentation until it practically hummed with potential. By the time the rest of the team arrived at 8:30, we had transformed a good pitch into an extraordinary one. Impressive work, Marcus commented as he reviewed the final slides. Henderson's going to eat this up. The clients arrived precisely at 10, a delegation of 6 executives led by Henderson Global's notoriously demanding CMO, Victoria Henderson herself. We ushered them into the conference room, offering coffee and pastries while they settled in. Victoria's sharp eyes assessed everything: the room, the refreshments, our attire, the subtle power dynamics of our team. I'd met her type before, nothing escaped her notice. Shall we begin? She asked, her tone making it clear it wasn't actually a question. I stepped forward, introducing myself and the team with practiced confidence. We're excited to share our vision for Henderson Global's future market position. Before we dive in, I'd like to introduce Vivian Lancaster Harlow, our senior content strategist who developed the core concept you'll see today. Vivian moved to the front, her presentation skills as polished as her appearance. As she outlined the central theme of authenticity in an artificial world, I watched Victoria's expression shift from skeptical to intrigued. Our presentation flowed seamlessly, each team member building on the previous section, creating a comprehensive vision for Henderson's brand evolution. Throughout, I maintained eye contact with Victoria, gauging her reactions, adjusting our emphasis accordingly. When we concluded, Victoria leaned forward. Impressive. Most agencies try to dazzle us with technological bells and whistles, forgetting that even in this digital age, consumers crave authentic connection. That was precisely our insight, Vivian replied. Technology should enhance human connection, not replace it. Victoria nodded approvingly. I'd like to hear more about how you'd implement this across our international markets, considering cultural variances in what constitutes authentic communication. For the next hour, we engaged in a detailed discussion, addressing questions, exploring potential challenges, and demonstrating our understanding of Henderson's unique market position. Throughout, Vivian and I functioned like a well-oiled machine, anticipating each other's points, building on shared insights, presenting a unified front that clearly impressed the clients. Well, Victoria said finally, gathering her materials. I can confidently say this is the most cohesive vision we've been presented. She glanced between Vivian and me, a knowing smile playing at her lips. There's something to be said for teams that understand each other on a fundamental level. As the Henderson executives filed out, Marcus clapped his hands together in barely contained excitement. They loved it, he whispered once they were safely out of earshot. Victoria Henderson doesn't compliment presentations, she eviscerates them. This is practically a marriage proposal. The team erupted in cheers and congratulations, the weeks of intense work finally paying off. Throughout the celebration, Vivian and I exchanged glances, silent acknowledgements of what we'd accomplished together, not just professionally but personally. Later that evening, as the office emptied and the city lights began to illuminate the darkening sky, Vivian appeared in my doorway, coat draped over her arm. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said quietly. "For giving my concept a chance. For seeing me as more than just your replacement." I nodded, understanding the layers beneath her words. "Your work deserved to be seen on its merits. That's all." She smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes. "My flight leaves Sunday. I'd like to think that when I go, I'm leaving behind something better than what I found." "I think you are," I replied, surprising myself with the sincerity in my voice. As she turned to leave, I found myself calling after her. "Vivian?" She paused, looking back. "You were never a shadow either." The understanding that passed between us required no further words. Two women who had finally stepped into the full light of their own making, no longer defined by the man who had tried to diminish them both. When the Henderson account was officially secured 3 days later, I celebrated not just a professional victory, but a personal one. I had finally stopped running from my past and started embracing my future, a future shaped by my own ambitions rather than someone else's rejection. I was Corinne Blaylock, Executive Creative Director, mentor, woman complete unto herself. Never again a shadow, but a force of nature, casting light rather than living in darkness.